continuing to blossom. We understand that what we're seeing from him, nobody expected. He didn't expect to see 38 points in game one, what he had last night, like 23 or what? Yeah, he had 23 last night. I mean, he was impressive, no doubt about that. I'm very concerned about James Harden. We got to stop. I mean, we got to have a conversation about James Harden that we haven't had. We talked about the pressure. We talked about, there have been, even though I'm not going to call him a choke artist like other people have. I don't feel that way about him. But he has had some questionable, highly questionable, even bad games in the postseason. He's had some good games. He's had some bad games. That's not where I'm going here, Jay. James Harden doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked the same since that very hamstring injury he suffered last year in Brooklyn that you talked about. I'm not seeing a guy that can get by people with ease. I'm seeing the ball handling skills, but he can't get by folks. He can't shrug off defenders the way I was accustomed to seeing. He danced on you. He had people scared to death, not just because of his step back, Jay, but his quickness of foot and how he could get by you. He was able to draw fouls because he could get a step on you and put you in a compromising position where you had to foul and prevent him from scoring a basket because he was so lightning quick. Plus, he had a quick release. Plus, he could step back and drill a three. And I still think he can step back and drill a three. I'm talking separation. I don't see that. And the reason why that's a big deal, you didn't bring James Harden here to beat the Toronto Raptors. You brought him for the next round and the round after that. So what the likelihood is, here's what we've got. Because Chicago, you'll make a valiant effort, but you ain't beating Milwaukee. You losing that series. Let's just get that over with, okay? So we got Miami next, because they're going to beat Atlanta, because Atlanta is just depleted. If Collins and Capella were there, that would be different. But the fact is, even though they're talking about Collins coming back, he ain't, he's been out. I don't know how good he's going to be. Capella's hampered, obviously. I think this Miami is just a little too deep, and I think they win that series. Harden has to go against them. You talk about P.J. Tucker, you talk about Jimmy Butler, and a host of dudes they're going to throw at him. And if you're fortunate enough to pull that off, you got Milwaukee along with Boston or Brooklyn waiting for you. Hey, I assure you, Harden would rather go on vacation than face Brooklyn. I promise you that. Because there's some personal stuff going on there. Oh, Lord, he don't want that matchup. I am concerned at what I'm seeing from James Harden, the individual player's inability to gain separation the way he once did, JJ. What are you seeing?
So, first of all, I think the Eastern Conference semifinals, that round, whatever the matchups end up being, is going to be fascinating. These next two rounds after the first round are going to be high-level basketball, and matchups are going to matter, as you brought up. Your concern is legitimate. The question becomes, is this version of James Harden, along with the emergence of Tyrese Maxey, obviously the shooting around Joel, and Tobias Harris as that third, fourth option offensively, is that enough to win the East? Assuming Joel Embiid is at his best and is playing at an MVP level, is that enough? And I agree with you. They didn't bring in this.
Talk about games one
I'm talking about the version of James Harden we're seeing right now.
It was a different 1 or 2. Game 1, he had 22 points, 14 assists. Yeah, last night, it wasn't the same as game 1. Which one?
He was 2 for 10 from 2 in game 1.
That's
the separation, the ability to blow by guys. We haven't seen that in a long time from James.
Okay.
So I'm talking about that concern. This version, the version that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and at times this season in Brooklyn, is that version as a facilitator, as a basketball genius, as a guy who can get you 10 to 12 assists a game, making the right plays. There's still always going to be attention paid to James. I brought up Joel earlier and the passing lanes that he has to pick apart this defense. Look, Maxey had 38 in game 1. I'm watching in the first half, James isoing at the top of the key. Fred VanVleet off the ball guarding Tyrese Maxey is 12 feet away in the gap, ready to help on James. The attention's still going to be there. Is this version, the thinking version of James Harden's game, who maybe has lost a little bit of a step and explosiveness, is this version good enough, along with all the other stuff I talked about, is that good enough to be a championship team? I don't know the answer to that.
I do.
I don't know the answer to that.
I do. I do. You see, you're reluctant to be definitive, and I respect
Oh,
that.
I'm not. No.
I don't have that
Because I like
problem.
to watch basketball play out. I like to
Excuse
watch
me.
basketball play
You
out.
like to watch-
I am not a prisoner of the moment, Stephen
Well, listen,
A.
well,
I
you
am
can
not.
say that. You can say that on television, but we damn well know off air you're a prisoner of the moment just like anybody else. You see what you see and you make predictions. You just don't publicize them. I, on the other hand, have no problem with that. All I'm saying to you is this. When I look at James Harden, I'm thinking about it's not about him. It's about the credibility of the competition. In the Milwaukee Bucks, we're talking about the reigning defending champions. In the Miami Heat, we're talking about a franchise whose culture is about championships and having a championship pedigree. And the personnel that they've built this roster with is rife with guys who have been there before, either champions themselves or very deep in the playoffs. Not to mention the coach who's a two-time champion and a basketball executive who's one of the iconic figures this sport has ever seen. And so you've got that going on. And then, of course, in Brooklyn, you got a two-time champion in KD. You got a champion in Kyrie Irving. I am saying this version of James Harden, that's not going to be enough. That's not going to be enough.
I just want to acknowledge one thing, though. Let's acknowledge that James Harden is not 25 or 26 years old. He's in his 13th season. He's on the other side of 30. There were a lot of miles that he had to run in Houston. There was a load that he had to carry in Houston for a number of years. There's a lot of miles on his body.
I'm lost. What's the purpose of bringing that up? Why?
I want to at least
grace,
acknowledge. Well, he is a human being. Let's give him a little bit of grace. You're
How are we not giving him grace?
No, you're expecting some version of him that existed 5 years ago. That's not going to happen. And by the way, like CP, everybody was down on him in 2019, his second year with Houston. He had the hamstring injury.
And we were wrong.
And we were wrong because he completely changed his body. He completely changed his diet.
Yeah, but he did it. And he proved us wrong because he changed and altered his way. You just sat up there and gave an epitaph. Well, he's not what he used to be. He's bought a lot of mileage. He's been there. I'm going like this. Wait a minute. I want to say something.
I'm saying he might not be the same player, but the next version of him could be good enough. That's what I'm saying. And by the way, I will say something definitive. By the because you're saying I don't make proclamations. I don't. Assuming Heat win and assuming the Sixers win, which I think is very likely, and I think will happen. I don't like that matchup for Philly. I like that. I like that matchup for Miami.
All I'm trying to say to you, JJ Redick, respectfully, is that when we're highlighting how proficient you once were and what your deficiencies may be, we take into account Father Time. I started off the conversation by mentioning the hamstring injury. I didn't sit up there and say he doesn't care, he's a scrub, he can't play. We know the greatness of James Harden, which is why some people expect more. And if he doesn't give it, we'll understand it to some degree. It doesn't mean he shouldn't be allowed to walk the streets of Philadelphia and that he cheated the game. We're just pointing out the competition that you're going against requires that you resemble to some degree what we've seen in years past in order for you to win a championship. That is not insulting him. That's simply highlighting basketball and what comes with it. And we're talking basketball.
But yeah, Harden's 32, Maxi's 21. Get it. Big age gap there. By the way, real quick, congrats to Doc Rivers, his 100th career playoff win, tied with Larry Brown for 4th all-time now. We'll get to the next game, fellas. No Luka, no problem. This was surprising. The Mavs take game 2 versus the Utah Jazz to knock the series at 1 game apiece. Jason Kidd wants to see Jalen Brunson get paid, rightfully so. He had 40